Welcome to RP Revenge.
I was halfway through chopping onions when I heard my son say it. Soft, almost offhand, but each word sliced cleaner than the knife in my hand. "Daddy said you eat but don't help." My hands froze. The knife clattered against the cutting board, its metallic ring slicing through the quiet kitchen. The smell of sautéing garlic lingered in the air, warm, golden, but suddenly it turned rancid in my chest. "What did you say, sweetheart?" I asked, my voice steady only because years of motherhood had trained me to keep it so. Ethan looked up from his toy cars on the kitchen floor, his dark curls sticking to his forehead. He was only 6. Too young to understand the venom behind mimicry. "Daddy said you just sit and eat and don't help him. He works hard and you don't." My throat tightened. "When did Daddy say that?" "Yesterday," he said simply. "When you were upstairs on your laptop." He was talking on the phone. The onions burned my eyes. Or maybe it wasn't the onions. I forced a smile. "Oh, honey. Sometimes adults say things they don't really mean." He nodded and went back to his toys, blissfully unaware that his words had just cracked open the floor beneath my feet. That night, after putting Ethan to bed, I sat at the kitchen table and watched the soft glow of my phone screen reflect off my untouched glass of wine. I scrolled past old photos, Mark and me laughing at a vineyard, his arms slung around me, Ethan's first steps, the day we moved into this house, sunlight spilling over our boxes and dreams. I'd built a home around trust. He was tearing it down with whispers. Mark wasn't always like this. When we met 12 years ago, he was charm embodied, all crooked smiles and sharp ambition. I was 28, running a small interior design business, independent, content. He was a rising architect, brilliant and driven. We built each other's lives like parallel blueprints, his career, my designs, our shared dream of family. But after Ethan was born, things shifted. My business slowed as I spent more time at home. His career, meanwhile, exploded. Projects, late nights, conferences. He began wearing arrogance like cologne, subtle at first, then overpowering. Still, I told myself it was just stress. Marriage ebbs and flows. He'd come around. Until the comments started. Little jabs disguised as jokes, "Must be nice to nap in the afternoon." Or maybe if you brought in more clients, we could afford that vacation. He said them lightly, but they stuck to me like burrs. And I, stupidly, stubbornly, tried harder. I picked up new clients. Redesigned the guest room into an office. Cooked elaborate dinners. Smiled through exhaustion. Because that's what love does, right? It adapts. It survives. But love doesn't survive lies. The first real crack appeared 2 months ago, though I didn't see it then. He started leaving earlier for client meetings. His phone was always face down. His shirt smelled faintly of perfume, not mine. He was distant, distracted. And when I'd ask if something was wrong, he'd sigh, annoyed. "Not everything's about you, Claire." I told myself not to snoop. I'd always believed that once you start searching for proof, you've already lost the relationship. But the seed was planted, and when Ethan repeated his father's words, that seed sprouted thorns. That night, after Mark fell asleep beside me, the steady rhythm of his breathing almost mocking, I slid out of bed and took his phone from the nightstand. It was locked. Of course it was. He'd changed the passcode months ago. I could have stopped there. I should have stopped there. But something cold and sharp had begun coiling inside me, something that didn't care about morals or dignity. It cared about truth. So, the next morning, when he left his laptop open on the counter before heading to work, I told myself it wasn't wrong to glance. Just one glance. Just enough to silence the ache in my chest. But silence never comes easy. The emails were hidden in a separate folder, buried under client correspondences. Clever. I might have missed them if one hadn't been tagged with a subject line that looked suspiciously personal, "Miss last night already." I clicked it. And my world tilted. "Can't stop thinking about you. Your shirt's still in my car." Breakfast was unforgettable. Below it, his reply. "You make me feel alive again. Don't worry about Claire, she's comfortable. We're basically roommates at this point. My breath stuttered. My hands trembled so violently I almost dropped the laptop. The sender's name burned into my retinas. Maya Chen. Her name had come up before, a new associate at his firm. I remembered meeting her at a dinner once. Pretty, soft-spoken, deferential. She'd complimented my dress. Smiled too long at Mark. My gut had fluttered uneasily then. I'd brushed it off. Now, that flutter felt like a scream I'd silenced too soon. That afternoon, when Mark came home, I couldn't look at him. Not even when he kissed Ethan's head and asked what was for dinner. Lasagna, I said, my voice mechanical. He smiled. Smells amazing. It was surreal, how normal everything looked. How betrayal could coexist with comfort so easily. I watched him eat, his fork scraping the plate. I memorized his casual movements, his small talk about work and weather. I'd loved this man. Shared my body, my secrets, my youth. And here he was, the same face, the same laugh, but hollowed out by deceit. Later, after Ethan was asleep, he turned to me in bed, brushed his thumb along my cheek. You okay, baby? You've been quiet lately. Something inside me nearly snapped. I'm fine, I whispered. Just tired. He nodded, kissed my forehead, and drifted off. I stared at the ceiling, listening to his even breaths, and wondered if Maya knew he slept with his mouth slightly open. If she knew he hummed in his sleep when he'd had too much wine. The intimacy of betrayal is what hurts most, not the act itself, but the knowledge that someone else now carries pieces of what once made you whole. In the days that followed, I became an actress. Smiling, cooking, small talking. All while replaying their emails, their hotel receipts, their hidden photos. Yes, I found those too. It wasn't rage that filled me. It was something heavier. Denser. Like molten metal cooling into resolve. I didn't want to scream. I wanted him to feel. And when Ethan came home from school one afternoon, repeating his father's cruel words again, "Daddy says you don't really help," that was when the plan began to crystallize. This house, the one I'd designed, nurtured, filled with every ounce of myself, was in my name. My inheritance from my parents. Mark had always joked that I'd gotten lucky marrying him because I owned property in Los Angeles. That without me, he'd still be renting. He used to say it playfully. Later, he said it with resentment. But I remembered every word. Every tone. And when betrayal seeps deep enough, memory becomes weaponry. So, I smiled. I kept playing the perfect wife. Until one Friday night, he packed his bag for a conference in San Francisco. I watched him load his suitcase into the car, kiss Ethan goodbye, kiss me lightly on the lips, habit, nothing more, and drive off. When the tail lights disappeared, I stood in the doorway for a long time. Then I turned back inside, picked up my phone, and called my realtor. I want to list my house, I said calmly. As is. Claire. Are you sure? Yes, I said. And I want it quiet. No open houses. Just private buyers. Fast. She hesitated. It's a prime property, Claire. If you're serious, we can move it for over $5 million. Perfect, I said. Let's do it. My hand didn't even shake. By the time Mark returned 3 days later, tan, relaxed, smelling faintly of unfamiliar perfume, the papers were already in motion. He walked into the kitchen, tossed his keys on the counter. You wouldn't believe how exhausting that trip was. I smiled faintly. Oh, I can imagine. He poured himself a drink. You look better, he said casually. Less stressed. I nodded. Yeah, I've been taking care of things. He didn't ask what things. He never did. And that night, as he kissed me goodnight, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message flashed across the screen before fading. Maya, can't stop thinking about your hands. I looked at him sleeping and whispered softly into the dark. Neither can I. The house sold in 8 days. 8. My realtor called while I was folding Ethan's laundry, her voice bright through the phone. Claire, we have an offer. $5.8 million, all cash, no contingencies. They want a 30-day close. I looked around at the room, Ethan's little shirts, the faint smell of fabric softener, the late afternoon light spilling through the window, and felt a strange calm settle over me. "Accept it," I said. The papers were signed before Mark ever knew there was a deal on the table. The title was mine alone, the one thing in our marriage he couldn't taint or control. He'd never cared to ask about property records, never bothered to check how the deed was structured. Arrogance breeds blindness. He'd said I didn't help. He was about to learn how much help I could withhold. The day I told him, the air felt charged, electric, like the moments before a storm breaks. He came home from work, loosened his tie, kissed Ethan's head, poured a drink. The ritual was muscle memory by now. I waited until Ethan was upstairs, his door closed, the sound of cartoons muffled behind it. Then I walked into the living room, calm, deliberate. "Mark," I said. He glanced up from his phone. "Yeah." "I sold the house." At first, he didn't process it. He blinked. Smirked. "What are you talking about?" "I sold it," I repeated. "The sale closed today." He laughed, an incredulous, disbelieving sound. "That's not funny." "I'm not joking." Something in my tone must have registered, because his laughter died instantly. You sold this house?" "Yes." He stared at me, eyes wide, color draining from his face. "Without telling me?" "It's in my name," I said evenly. "I didn't need your permission." He set his glass down too hard. Whiskey sloshed over the rim. "You've lost your damn mind, Claire. We live here. Ethan lives here. Where the hell are we supposed to go?" I met his gaze, unflinching. "You'll figure something out. You always do." "Claire, stop this. We can talk about." "No, we can't." My voice cracked slightly, then steadied. "Because you talked enough with her." Silence. For a moment, the only sound was the slow tick of the clock on the wall. Then his shoulders stiffened. "What are you talking about?" "Maya," I said simply. He froze. His jaw tightened. I saw it in his eyes, that flicker of recognition, the split second before denial kicks in. "She's just a colleague," he started. "Don't," I said sharply. "Don't insult me by lying again. I saw the emails. The hotel receipts. The photos." He opened his mouth, closed it, swallowed hard. "Claire, listen." "No. You listen." I took a step closer, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. "You had your affair. You humiliated me. You poisoned our son's mind against me. And you did it all while living in a house that my parents bought, a house I maintained, cleaned, cared for, while you called me lazy behind my back." His face hardened, but I saw something else flicker beneath the anger, fear. "You can't just throw me out," he said, his voice low. "I have rights." "You have 30 days, I replied, "before the new owners move in. Consider it a generous eviction." He stared at me, searching for weakness. "You're doing this to punish me. You'll ruin Ethan's stability just to get revenge." For a moment, guilt pricked my chest. Ethan's face flashed in my mind, his innocent eyes, his tiny voice asking why Daddy said those things. I took a slow breath. "No. I'm doing this to protect him. I won't let him grow up thinking disrespect is love." Mark exhaled sharply, hands raking through his hair. "You're overreacting. It was a mistake. I didn't mean to." "You didn't mean to get caught," I interrupted. "That's the only thing you're sorry for." He stared at me for a long time, the silence between us heavy, strangling. Then he muttered, almost under his breath, "You'll regret this." Maybe I would. But in that moment, I didn't care. The weeks that followed were strange, a quiet unraveling. Mark moved through the house like a ghost. Sometimes I'd hear him pacing the hallway late at night, muttering under his breath, making calls he thought I couldn't hear. I packed slowly, methodically, room by room. Ethan asked once, "Mommy, why are we moving?" I knelt beside him. "Because sometimes grown-ups need to start over." "Is Daddy coming with us?" My throat tightened. "No, sweetheart. He's going somewhere else." He was quiet for a moment, processing. Then he nodded. Okay. As long as we're together. That night, after he fell asleep, I cried, not for Mark, not even for the marriage, but for the version of myself that believed love meant endurance. I'd carried this family like a quiet engine, running beneath the surface, unseen but essential. He'd mistaken my silence for weakness. He was about to see what strength really looked like. The closing date arrived on a Friday. Mark came home early, tense, demanding to see the documents. "This is insanity," he said, rifling through the file on the counter. "You can't just uproot everything." "Already done," I said, sliding the pen across the table toward him. "The new owners will be here Monday. We'll be out by Sunday night." He looked up at me, jaw clenched. "Where are you going?" "I found a townhouse in Pasadena, closer to Ethan's school." "And me?" I met his gaze. "You'll have to find your own place. Or maybe Maya can help." His hand tightened around the folder. "You're heartless." "No," I said softly. "Just finally heart-free." That weekend, he moved his things out. I didn't watch. On Sunday evening, after he drove away for the last time, I stood in the empty living room. The walls were bare, the air echoing with ghosts of laughter and fights and birthdays. I could almost hear Ethan's toddler giggles, smell Mark's cologne, see the life we'd built and destroyed, layered like old paint. I ran my fingers along the doorframe where Ethan's height marks were etched. My heart twisted. But beneath the sadness was something else. Peace. True peace isn't soft. It's sharp. It cuts away everything that doesn't belong to you anymore. 2 weeks later, Mark called. I almost didn't answer. When I finally did, his voice was brittle. "I hope you're happy." "I am," I said quietly. "Ethan's doing well. He's been smiling more." He laughed bitterly. "You think this fixes anything? You humiliated me. You destroyed our family." "No, Mark," I said. "You did that. I just cleaned up the mess." He was silent for a long moment. Then, with a sneer I could hear even through the phone, he said, "You'll be nothing without me." I smiled faintly. Funny. I already feel lighter. And I hung up. Months passed. Life found a rhythm again. Ethan and I settled into our new place, smaller, quieter, but filled with laughter that didn't hide bruises. I rebuilt my business. Clients came, word spread. The house sale had given me enough to invest, to breathe, to live. One evening, as we were setting the table for dinner, Ethan looked up at me and said, "Mommy, I told Daddy something today." My hands paused over the plates. "Oh, what did you tell him?" He grinned, gap-toothed and innocent. "I told him you help a lot." The words hit me like sunlight breaking through clouds. I smiled, eyes stinging, and pulled him close. "Thank you, sweetheart. That means everything." A month later, I received an email from Maya. It was brief. "Claire, I don't expect you to forgive me, but I wanted you to know, it's over between Mark and me. He's been angry, erratic. I think he lost his job. I'm sorry for everything. Maya." I read it twice, then deleted it. Forgiveness wasn't for her. Or for him. It was for me, and I'd already granted it to myself the day I signed those papers. Sometimes, I drive past the old house. The new owners planted hydrangeas where I once grew roses. The windows glow warm at dusk, different furniture, different laughter. It doesn't hurt anymore. That house was never the foundation. I was. And when you finally understand your own worth, revenge stops being about destruction. It becomes reclamation. So when people ask how I started over, I just smile and say, "My son said I eat but don't help, so I quietly sold the house they lived in for $5.8 million. And every time I say it, I can still taste the truth, bittersweet, but finally mine."